Welcome to Math 1324. This is Chapter 5, Section 2, Example 8. And in this example, we have a woman is selling some land, and she'll be paid a lump sum of $80,000 in 7 years. Until then, the buyer pays 6% simple interest quarterly. A, find the amount of each quarterly interest payment. And then B, the buyer sets up a sinking fund so that enough money will be present to pay off the $80,000 after that 7 years, and the buyer wants to make biannual payments into the sinking fund. The account pays 7% compounded semi-annually. Hey, I got it that time. Find the amount of each payment into the, fund is fine, but, fund, yes, with a D. Awesome. Okay, so there's actually a lot happening here, and there's actually two different parts to this that are obvious, but even more so, the first one isn't even compound interest, it's simple interest, that's all it is. So here, we want to find the amount of each quarterly interest payment if we're working with simple interest. That is so important. Okay, so remember, simple interest is just the original formula that we saw of PRT. Okay, so in this question, the P is how much the land is worth. So we have 80,000 times the interest rate that we're given, and she's given that's 6% and then quarterly. Okay, so 6% would be 0.06. And the quarterly is the time, basically. How much of a year is a quarter of a year? Well, it's 1/4 of a year, right? It's 3 out of 12, or preferably just 1/4. And then you just type that in. And because I actually have faith in you, I'm not going to show you typing in 80,000 times 0.06 times 1/4. Which will just give me $1,200. Okay, so what's happening here is when you buy something and you take out a loan or anything like that, in this case, there's an agreement between the buyer and the seller. In this case, the buyer or seller, whichever way you want to think of it as, the land is worth $80,000. And they only want that they don't have the money now, but they want to pay it as they get the money, or when they get the money. And so it's going to take 7 years to do that. But during that time, she shouldn't just let the land sit for nothing and she gets nothing from it, right? And so what's happening is they're saying, I will pay you 6% of this total amount every quarter. Now yearly 6%, but it compounds quarterly, basically. And so if they didn't make these payments, this would be a compound interest question. Say, of that $80,000, how much should they pay in 7 years? It'll be a lot more money, right? Because every time that you're making that payment, or you're not making this payment, interest is occurring of at least $1,200 every quarter. And so every quarter it's actually increasing by $1,200, which means by the time they're done, it's probably worth over $100,000 for what they would need to pay. So they're wanting to keep that payment flat at $80,000. That's the reason that they're making these simple interest payments. Now, this is actually very similar to what you would see if you had like bonds or something like that. Bonds can pay semi-annual payments as well. There's a lot of things that can happen. So when you're purchasing something, the only way to buy something isn't the take out a loan and pay for it over a certain amount of time. There are other ways. This way is called a sinking fund. Okay, and so let's talk about the sinking fund. This is the other part of the question. How much should they put into an account every other 6 months, I guess? Every 6 months? Yes, every 6 months. Because this is, again, semi-annual, right? Which means twice a year. And they want to be able to pay off the $80,000 in the 7 years. Now, this fund that they're putting it in is actually given at 7% compounded semi-annually. Okay. With that being said, this is very similar to the question that we saw previously in the last example. And as a result, I'm actually just going to go ahead and show this because the tedium solver is just easier here. Okay, so capital N is little n times t. Little n in this case, semi-annual compounding means 2 times a year. And the number of years is 7. So 2 times 7, which will give us 14. So there will be 14 payments. The interest rate is right here of 7%. So make sure it's the whole number 7. PV, there's nothing in the account right now, so it's just going to be 0. PMT, we don't know. That's actually what we want to figure out. The FV, the future value, will be the value of the land, which means we need to pay off that $80,000. So we want to be able to have $80,000 in the 7 years. P/Y, C/Y will be 2, and then we just type this in. Now, I'm not going to show you me typing this in. It's just exactly what you see here. So 14 for N. I% is 7. 0 for present value. Future value is 80,000. And then 2 times a year. And alpha enter on payment gives me negative 4525.66 technically, rounded up here. Okay, and so that's how much each payment should be. So the payments are $4,525.66. And remember that the seller or the buyer is paying $1,200 every 3 months, right? 3 months? Yeah, 3 months. So every 3 months they're paying $1,200. In other words, every year they're paying $4,800 to the seller just to basically have use of the land during that time. And so 4,800 times the 7 years, what is 4,800 times 7? I can do it in my head, but why would I? $33,600. So basically, $4,800 a year, really? 1,200 times 4, yeah. So $33,600. So the seller actually is going to receive $33,600 during the first 7 years, and then at the end of that 7 years, she's just going to receive a flat payment of $80,000. So overall, not a bad deal for either one of them, but whether one's better than the other, I can't really say. I will say though that the buyer is able to get a higher interest rate for the money that they're putting into the account than what the seller is selling for. So, maybe it is better for the buyer here. Who knows? Anyway, they both get what they want. And that's the entire purpose of this. All right. Well, there you go. Here's the entire question. And I will see you all in the next video. Have fun.